Hey, are you anxious and or depressed? Have you tried everything to fix it, from exercise to SSRIs to psychedelics, only to find no relief from the relentless torment coming from within your own brain? Well, have I got a solution for you? Don't be woke. That's right. Just stop being like that. Go back to sleep. Stop paying attention to what's happening in the world. There. Isn't that better? Study woke attitudes linked to anxiety, depression, and a lack of happiness, says SciPost this week. Or, as the New York Post put it,
woke people more likely to be unhappy, anxious, and depressed. New study suggests.
These headlines all relate back to a study published just last week in the Scandinavian Journal of Psychology titled Construction and Validation of a Scale for Assessing Critical Social Justice Attitudes. As always, links to absolutely everything I talk about in every video on this channel can always be found in the transcript, which is available for free to everyone. It's over on my Patreon, and a link to that, as always, is down in the doobly-doo. Now, you may already see a potential issue with taking this study's results and applying them, to the people who invented and popularized the word woke, i.e. Black Americans. This study was Scandinavian. A Finnish psychologist developed a woke scale that he could give to 5,000 Finnish people to determine how woke they are. And he compared that to how anxious or depressed or happy they said they were. He found that wokeness was weakly associated with anxiety and depression and negatively associated with happiness. This is in no way a surprising result. Woke has been twisted into a dismissive buzzword that conservatives use to criticize anything they don't like. But this study's author started with the following definition: specific theoretical perspectives that recognize that society is stratified, i.e. divided and unequal, in significant and far-reaching ways along social group lines that include race, class, gender, sexuality, and ability. Critical social justice recognizes inequality as deeply embedded in the fabric of society, i.e. as structural, and actively seeks to change this. And I think that definition is a fair one. And I think you can see that that definition would be pretty clearly applied mostly, almost exclusively, to liberal, progressive people on the left. And we have reams of data already suggesting that, yes, more liberal people tend to be less happy than more conservative people. And sure enough, this current study simply supports that past research. Yes, there was very weak evidence for connecting wokeness and poor mental health, but lower level of mental well-being was mostly associated with being on the political left, and not specifically with having a high critical social justice attitude scale score. But you can't really publish a paper just supporting what 100 studies have shown before, because the system is broken. So instead, he took that very weak correlation with wokeness and not only got published, but also got some great publicity in the US right-wing press. I'll say that even though this study isn't shocking, it's not good. The scale the author came up with is in fact terrible, which is why I suspect he didn't get a more impressive result that he was looking for. So after much studying and surveying and refining, here are the statements that he came up with to score people on their wokeness level. If white people have on average a higher level of income than black people, it is because of racism. University reading lists should include fewer white or European authors. Microaggressions should be challenged often and actively. Trans women who compete with women in sports are not helping women's rights. That's reverse scored. We don't need to talk more about the color of people's skin, also reverse scored. A white person cannot understand how a black person feels equally well as another black person. And a member of a privileged group can adopt features or cultural elements of a less privileged group. Again, reverse scored. Maybe it all sounds better when you're in Finland, but here in the United States, that scale is nonsensical. I would have no idea if I agree or disagree with, we don't need to talk more about the color of people's skin. And do trans women help women's rights by competing with cis women in sports? Are there cases in which a random white person understands a random black person equally or even better than another random black person? Like, I'm pretty sure that one of my woke beliefs is that black people are not a monolith who are all friends. Like they all just know each other. And, it's a really bad scale. If these questions are anywhere near as confusing in Finland as they would be in the United States, then that's a great way to explain the results they got. So, for instance, a strong correlation for people on the left and mental health problems, but only a weak correlation for woke people and mental health problems. That also explains the other result that surprised the study author, which was that there were way fewer woke respondents than he thought he would get. Maybe if you had asked clearer questions, you would have found a few more. In fact, this study actually found the strongest correlation for wokeness and mental health problems with the clearest statement on that survey, which is the first one. If white people have, on average, a higher level of income than black people, it's because of racism. That's a fine question. People knew what they were answering, and that's why you got the expected result. All of this brings me back to the fact that, research suggests that the further left you are, the greater chance there is that you have depression or anxiety, or that you have less happiness compared to people further to the right. The interesting question to ask next, of course, is why? It's a tremendously complicated question because there are just so many factors at play. Some researchers have looked for a genetic link, something in our genes that makes us both more likely to be progressive and also more likely to have poor mental health. There's lots of other data to suggest that it could be some other social confounding factor, some unknown that could make someone more likely to be both liberal and depressed, or both conservative and happy. Religion is one such possible cause, in that a very religious person may be both more happy because they think an omnipotent being loves them and has their back, and also more conservative because that same omnipotent being hates gay people. Or there's the hypothesis that you can't even really study this problem using self-reported data because conservatives are more likely to have a stigma against mental health problems, meaning that they're less likely to admit that they are anxious or depressed compared to liberals. And of course, there's that pesky little confounding factor of actually experiencing injustice yourself, which is why it's more likely that people from marginalized backgrounds are more likely to be liberal and also less likely to be happy. An interesting study from 2022 examined the political orientation and mental health of more than 86,000 American teenagers between 2005 and 2018. They found that depression rose for pretty much all of them as the years went on, but it rose the fastest for those who identified as liberal compared to conservative, and fastest of all for liberal girls from low-income families. Broad-reaching phenomena such as worsening climate change or school shootings may impact mental health for all adolescents, the authors write, while social injustices like sexism, which gained media attention through the Me Too movement, may be felt most acutely by those personally affected. The authors further suggest that left-leaning teens may have been deeply affected by Donald Trump's election as president, the U.S. Supreme Court's subsequent lurch to the right, rising socioeconomic inequality, and worsening political polarization. Liberal adolescents may have therefore experienced alienation within a growing conservative political climate, such that their mental health suffered in comparison to that of their conservative peers whose hegemonic views were flourishing, they write. As an interesting aside, while conservative students tended to be happier overall in this study, they found that this boost in happiness was not enjoyed by conservatives from underprivileged groups, who are potentially less inclined to interpret their own experiences of inequality as systemic in nature versus resulting from personal inadequacy. In my unprofessional opinion, I think that all of that plays a role, but also that there is just a straight up causal relationship between having a progressive outlook in which I care deeply about the plight of other people on the other side of the planet, even if they are very different from me, and in which I actively try to improve those people's lives by fighting against the people who are actively trying to make those lives worse or even kill them. That directly leads to me having a bit less happiness and serenity. By definition, we have a very common saying that describes this phenomenon: ignorance is bliss. Or, how happy is the blameless Vestal's lot, the world forgetting by the world forgot, eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, each prayer accepted and each wish resigned. As Pope Alexander once wrote, I am probably a little sadder on average than a randomly chosen alt-right Christian for the same reason why I'm probably sadder than my dog. It's just a difference of degree. So sure, conservative outlets like the New York Post can brag that they're happier than me all they want. Because first of all, despite my opening in this video, I can't just decide to improve my mental health by becoming a conservative. I can't just stop caring about other people. The same way I can't get the happiness boost that religious people enjoy by just suddenly deciding to start believing in a God. And second of all, even if I could do that, I wouldn't. I will gladly sacrifice a tiny fraction of my own happiness, which is abundant because I live an incredibly lucky and awesome life, in order to try to help the people who don't have 1% of what I have. Because that's what it means to be a progressive humanist, instead of a selfish creature who just expects cheese to magically fall from the sky because he deserves it just for existing and being the goodest boy an omnipotent being ever saw. You just dropped it. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.